How can you tell a director who does not know how to direct?
I have a lot of sympathy for directors learning how to direct in post, because I think directors learn how to direct on set first, they learn how to direct in pre-production second, and then they learn how to direct in post-production third. And so it takes some reps for a director to understand how to direct in post-production. And so if they've done their work and they are good directors on set and on pre-production, there's some sympathy, I guess you could say, with directing in post-production. And as long as they come in with that that posture of, what have you seen work in workflows? What have you seen work in this process and in these scenarios? Because as editors, we see a lot more directors and a lot more processes. And so for me, it's that's the kind of posture that I'm looking for. But you usually can tell a director is new or new to learning how to direct in post when they immediately go to the specifics. They have the answers. They know exactly what this film is going to be and what this film should be. And they just come in with this fully formed, I know what I'm doing, I know what the story is, and they start really, really fine-grained, start working on stuff. That's when I'm like, okay, you're relatively new or relatively inexperienced in this scenario and in this stage. And so I try and break that. I try and work against it, not in a combative way, but just a way that's like, listen, just like, let me do my thing. Let me do my thing first, and then we can start to work with what's there. Because if we start down this path, this film will never get done. Like, plenty of films die in post, and I don't want this to be one of them. So like, let's just work on this process, and we can alter the workflow as we go, but just give me a minute. Just give me a beat with the footage. Let me do my thing, and then we can go on. And so that's usually how I can sniff out like an inexperienced or a new director in post, is when it's just like, especially in specifically, or maybe not specifically, but especially in documentary, it's, I know the film, I know the story, I know everything about it, and they want to start working in the weeds immediately. That's when it's like, okay, little green.
What about the footage itself? How can you tell that a director may be newer by, transporting stuff into the timeline?
Yeah. Yeah, when I'm watching down footage, you can tell an experienced director because they see the narrative unfolding before them and they follow it. And then they shoot coverage for it. And so Lucian, who's the director of Lions, does great at this. He can feel a scene developing in the moment, and he knows what to nudge the subjects in what direction to start to build an environment. And then after he knows he's gotten that content, I see him bop around the room and do coverage and to get establishing shots, setup shots, details, things like that. And all of a sudden, it's not a ton of footage, but I have all of the building blocks I need right there. And so because I understand, I see him realize a scene as it's unfolding. And then he stays with it. He knows where the camera needs to be. He stays with it. He stays with the content, the subjects, the arc, the developing arc. And then after the moment has passed, he'll go back and start to pick up shots that I can use to build. And so for me, I can feel very, very like right in front of me when I see a director who understands, who's seasoned, and who understands something that's unfolding before them, and then they can chase that down. Conversely, I can be like, that's the story, this is happening, it's happening, like the character arc is developing, and all of a sudden the director just like goes over here and like walks into another room, like, what are you doing? Like, things were happening, it was happening, and it can be a little frustrating. And so for me, it's that I can feel the director be like, it's happening, and they just like hone in on it.
So in a sense, they almost know to let that moment be and don't interfere too much? Don't
interfere too much, or interfere appropriately. Like, there'll just be little nudges, like, oh, let's talk about that again. Or can we actually maybe take that topic and like they can kind of just with ever so sleight of hand and just gently kind of continue to develop a scene. Because, it's like in documentary, I mean, we're all living a life that could be in a movie, but at the same time, it's like not always movie worthy. And so it's like something is happening and could be a passing and fleeting moment, but like, let's inspire that to play out a little bit more as a director. And like, let's develop that a little bit more. Like, let's go on this ride with the subjects. And so it's not interfering too much, but then it's interfering when you should interfere to like help a scene have a beginning, middle, and end with a character.
Any director mistakes that just drive you crazy?
One of them would be walking away from a developing scene. Like, that kind of drives me crazy. Or turning the camera too quick, or turning the camera off too quick. And a lot of that is, I know I'm speaking from a from a documentary standpoint, because a lot of times the director is also holding the camera. But also in an interview aspect, it's like being as good of a listener, when there are those talking head interviews, being as good of a listener as you are an asker, because subjects will bring up something that's like, ooh, that's interesting, like, let's go down that path. And so for me, it's also being open and willing to in an early stage of the process, production, let the film tell you what it wants to be. Like, something is happening, like, follow that. And so for me, it's like, when I know there's meat on the bone, I know there's more there, and it's just like, I understand timelines and they got to get out of the house and their family's got to eat, whatever. But there are times when it's just like, you missed it. Like, you missed it. You just missed it. It was like, it was about to happen and you missed it. That's the stuff that a lot of other things you can fix, and you can, like, cut around, and you can help, restore some of, but that's the stuff that's like, that's important stuff. And so that's where I get a little frustrated.
So maybe they were too superficial with the scene, and there was more they could have gone with it.
Yeah, they, like, captured too much of the surface, and there was something happening underneath that if they spent perhaps a little more time, a little more intention digging into something. I'd rather dig in too much, and I understand the relationship between a director and a subject. You don't want to push them too hard too early, but there's definitely times where it's just, maybe they just weren't open to the developing scene that was before them, and they just move on too quick. They turn the camera away, or they don't let it play out. They don't let a moment play out, things like that.
Do you think that just comes then with the experience of knowing, like, okay, I trust myself in this role. I realize this subject does not necessarily know me that well or trust me, but I trust myself as this director to steer the ship?
Yeah, I think so. I think it comes with experience. It comes with, sometimes there's young directors that just have that swagger and that confidence to, like, really lean into it. And so I think it can be, I do believe it can be, like, learned over time. There's, like, some experienced directors who can, like, build that muscle, and then there's some that are just born with it. But I think it is the swagger, it's the confidence, it's the ability to be open to the film. It's the ability to be open to the scene and what's happening.
Can you quickly touch on the importance of reactions?
Like reaction shots? Yeah, I mean, so much plays out in the reaction of, I was cutting a scene that was basically all built on reactions. It was like, you want to see the subtle moment, you want to see the subtle facial expression, the subtle, uneasiness, the readjusting in the chair. There's so much of that we can relate to. Like, I feel like we can relate and sympathize with somebody who's talking and giving a monologue, or giving their understanding of an emotional situation, whatever. If there's a conversation between, say, a husband and a wife, like, we can understand that, but we can also understand the reception of that. Like, we've all been on the receiving end of something that's happened. And so I feel like there's a shortcut or a cheat to developing empathy with a character by utilizing a great reaction shot. Because it's like, I've been there, I felt that, and I had the same reaction, or I had a different reaction. Interesting, you had that one. And so for me, a reaction shot, a well-used reaction shot, can do so much to develop a character in just, like, one little moment, because you just see the disposition of that person, and you intuit, like, what they're thinking, and you want to know what they're thinking. And then if it's followed up by, like, them laying out what they thought, it gets really fun. You know what I mean? It's just, like, so much you can do off of a great reaction shot. And so canning those, getting as many as you can during production, this is where you can, like, get movie with it, but it's like, it doesn't have to be the actual reaction of that moment. It's like, how do we want to develop a character? We should use this reaction shot. She was frustrated by what he said rather than sad by what he said. So you can start to develop a character and develop a character arc and to develop the arc of a film based on the reaction shots you use. So, reaction shots go a very long way into developing, like, a character and the texture of a character.
Yeah, I'm thinking too of, like, documentaries I've seen that are more investigative in nature, and if a question is asked and the person squirms or there's a facial tic or something, then it kind of like you're more interested because you realize there's something there.
Yep, there's something there, there's something under the surface. I wonder if I'm going to get a chance to know what that is or if I'm going to have to guess what that is. Like that's all a very fun game for the audience to play. It's a good ride.